Today's video was written by Gontran H. Sometimes a guy does something illegal, dangerous, or downright stupid, and instead of being ashamed of it, he puts it on his resume and turns it into an anecdote people are still talking about 40 years later. And on top of that, the story is actually good. Even better, on Wikipedia it gives him a hero's aura. Robert Moriarty flew under the Eiffel Tower. There you go, let's just say it right away. Not an old lady's purse or a tourist's wallet while its owner waits to go show off at the top of the Parisian landmark. No, flew in the aeronautical sense of the word. Plane, engine, wing, all that. He literally flew under the Eiffel Tower, and it wasn't during the war, it wasn't to save anyone, and it wasn't a mistake. You don't do that absent-mindedly, you do it when you're completely clear-headed. Or paradoxically completely crazy. Something useless, so eminently poetic. And how do you reach such a level of poetry? How can a guy rack up 824 combat missions in Vietnam, set 14 aviation records, cross the Atlantic solo, and end up thinking, hey, what if I flew under the Eiffel Tower just like that, for nothing but the pleasure and the achievement? And this video, Calm Down, is not an apology for reckless acts that today would be considered acts of terrorism. It's not a criticism either, it's just a little useful reminder. Sometimes the straight line is just a detour for those who lack imagination. Robert Moriarty was born in 1946 in Schenectady, New York in the United States, which is already a good start if you ever want to fly under the Eiffel Tower without permission. Let's just say it's much more rebellious than being born in Monaco or Melun. 1946 was right after the war. That time in the USA was good for two things: having babies and sending them to fight in Vietnam 20 years later. His parents refused to break tradition. Robert grew up in a time when people smoked in hospitals, kids rode unbelted in station wagons, schools had asbestos, alcohol was suggested to anxious young mothers, and doctors made up the benefits of tobacco in the pages of Life magazine. A world where milk is delivered every morning to your doorstep and no one thinks to steal it, where kids are hit with whatever is at hand, which sometimes includes other children, where homosexuals are treated with electroshock, where war is a career, and where TV has 3 channels but only 2 opinions. A time as well when people dreamed of being pilots because newspapers made heroes out of them from World War II, with dramatic colour shots taken from below. Very quickly, Robert seems to suffer from a rare condition: chronic inability to be satisfied with what he's offered. He's a typical American child, believing anything is possible, especially the unnecessary. At 16, he's already flying. Still not old ladies or tourists, at least that's not what the story says, but in the air. He earns his pilot's license while his classmates still debate between math and the wrench. By the way, his twin brother James will become a top corporate lawyer. At 20, Robert Moriarty is sent to Vietnam as ordained by the era's divine plan at the height of the Cold War. He was the youngest US Navy fighter pilot deployed there at the time. That's already a first. He flew 824 combat missions. The number is public and acknowledged, but not celebrated. He would never use it as a patriotic argument. He hates war, and even today, he still worries, sometimes publicly, about the fate of humanity if local conflicts continue. It's not exactly glorious to kill others, but that was his job in the late 60s. A job that's slightly more risky than being President of the United States or General Secretary of the Soviet Communist Party. He flies, he bombs, he survives, he becomes what is called an ace, a trump card for the good guys. He pilots an F-4B Phantom II. It's a machine built to go extremely fast, reach great heights, and fly close to enemy missiles. So he takes part in 824 combat missions. In 1970, he leaves the military. He's given enough. And he's also been precise enough. He's starting to get tired of flying for others and shooting at people whose eyes he can't even see. Sometimes even shooting at them blindly. He discovers that if you've escaped death 824 times, you can consider much riskier activities. Living, for example. And if possible, in peace. It's not time to discuss the Eiffel Tower yet. He still has a few detours to make. Records, crossings, ideas that are more and more, how should I say, freed from gravity. At this point, Moriarty is no longer really a pilot. He's a kid on the loose, speeding full throttle toward the wall of pointless feet, and therefore the essential feet. And he definitely doesn't intend to honk. So he decides not to settle down. He doesn't open a cocktail bar, he doesn't become a math teacher, he doesn't get a funeral plan, and he doesn't buy a dog. He decides to keep doing what he's always done, flying. But this time, all alone and in planes that aren't used to kill anyone. Small planes, single engine, sometimes not even very new. He becomes a ferry pilot. His job is to deliver planes to other people on other continents. It's easier to handle than diplomacy, which until then he'd only served as the armed wing of. He crosses the Atlantic. Then he does it again. And he does it again. To this day, he has more than 240 crossings to his name. You have to enjoy boredom at high altitude, or else refuse to have a stable social life. Or even consider that commercial airplanes are a waste of time. But Moriarty doesn't just fly from A to B. He wants to leave a mark. So he starts breaking other records. Real ones. Certified. Recognizable. One of them, in 1984, saw him cross the Atlantic from New York to Paris aboard a Beechcraft Bonanza C-35. By doing so, he set a speed record for his category. No one asked him to do it. No one stopped him from doing it either. Maybe that's what freedom is. He pulls off technical feats one after another, sometimes without even thinking about it. In total, he holds 14 international aviation records. He doesn't put them on his fridge, that would seem pretentious. And then, does he even have a refrigerator? Does he have a permanent home? Isn't he ultimately a homeless wanderer, only happy when he's flying? At that time, Robert Moriarty also started writing texts, testimonies, rants. He would later publish in 2016 a book titled The Art of Peace, apparently not translated into French, in which he openly criticizes war, propaganda, arms dealers, and political illusions. He doesn't regret having fought. He regrets that it was necessary. And that it still is. Since leaving the military, he has been deeply reflecting on war itself. In his book, he shares a unique perspective, that of a decorated veteran who, with hindsight, questions the legitimacy and effectiveness of armed conflicts. Moriarty describes the Vietnam War and others as an undertaking without a clear strategy, where the United States got involved without a real objective, while their opponents have been fighting for their independence for decades. He writes, "We had no strategy other than simply waging war. Our enemies, however, knew exactly what victory meant for them. They wanted control of their destiny. This realization led him to an unequivocal conclusion. War is a fraud." He says modern conflicts often serve only the interests of the military-industrial complex, harming people and nations. For Moriarty, true strength lies in peace, not in military domination. His testimony offers a rare and valuable perspective, that of a man who has known war from the inside and who, strengthened by this experience, calls for a profound rethinking of our collective choices regarding conflict and peace. But let's go back to 1984. It's a time of war, a fresh one, not all that cold anymore, with sugar-free cola, battery-powered cassette Walkmans, and thick professional moustaches. To Reagan joking about bombing the USSR, forgetting that his microphone is on. With neon lights, big hair, fluorescent colors, aerobics, movies where America saves the world and the USSR is obviously the bad guy. Bula, you naughty girl. And just beating up Stallone in Rocky 4 or Stallone in Rambo 7 Tiva. In France, Mitterrand still has ideas Coluche isn't dead yet, the Greens make everyone laugh except themselves, and there's a very serious debate in Liechtenstein about whether women should be given the right to vote. 1984 is also the year when everyone rereads Orwell, sometimes up to page 2, and congratulates themselves that everything is fine, except that we'll probably have a nuclear war one of these days. Cameras monitor parking lots, TVs watch the viewers, and no one can imagine that an American could mistake the Eiffel Tower for a fairground attraction. Especially not an American. Especially not a veteran, and especially not in broad daylight. In March 1984, Robert Moriarty signed up for an air race between Paris and Libreville. This isn't a sightseeing tour. Besides, he's taking it seriously. He has a Beechcraft Bonanza 535 flight plan and a well-prepared machine. For now, it's clean, it's well-organized. In short, it's nothing like Moriarty at all. He's taking off. He's ambitious and a favorite. And then, near Portugal, the engine starts making noises that remind you that flying isn't a completely natural activity. He has to land. Technical failure. And that's the end of the race. The story could have ended there, just another dropout in a niche competition. No one would have talked about it, maybe except for a local rag, but not even that. Yet Moriarty doesn't go home, and first of all, well, where is home for him anyway? Instead, he goes back to Paris. Then suddenly something happens in his head. He decides that since he won't win any race, he'll at least do something that no one will dare to copy. On March 31, 1984 at 11:20, he takes off from Le Bourget. He is alone in his Bonanza. He filed a flight plan for Shannon in Ireland, but he won't go to Shannon. Meanwhile, another idea arose, flying under the Eiffel Tower. He didn't ask for permission. He wouldn't have gotten it anyway. He didn't notify the authorities either. So 9/11 hasn't happened yet, why bother them with that? He takes off, flies, and lines up along the Champ de Mars, meaning from southwest to northwest, and he goes under the structure. Clear. Without a hitch. Since you still have to pull back on the stick quickly, my Chabalet, or you'll crash into the Palais de Chaillot and ruin everything. And since he had the good sense to bring a cameraman with him, which means he wasn't completely alone, the feat immediately went down in history. Well, immediately. Let's not exaggerate either. Social media and even the internet don't exist yet, at least not on a popular level. But there you go, he's being filmed, because if you do something stupid and nobody films it, it doesn't really exist. Robert Moriarty is not the first to challenge the Iron Lady. In 1926, Léon Collot, the backup pilot, tried to fly under the Eiffel Tower in a B-19. This daring bet ended in tragedy. Blinded by the sun, he hit a radio antenna and crashed miserably before the eyes of the crowd, who were also dazzled, but by the madness of the daredevil pilots. Years later, in 1944, the American pilot William Overstreet Jr. chased a German fighter under the arches of the Eiffel Tower, shooting down his opponent in the middle of occupied Paris. A feat that remained in the shadows for a long time until its official recognition in 2009. But between a failure and a feat born of circumstance, Moriarty is truly a pioneer. Yet, in 1984, his feat was also quickly censored. The footage circulates discreetly. The French authorities, who didn't see it coming, chose the most elegant strategy: not to make a fuss. No prosecution, no trial, and no dramatic statement. Officially, nothing happened. Unofficially, they let him know that it's better if he doesn't set foot in France for quite some time. Moriarty doesn't ask for anything. He packs up his plane, leaves without any media fuss, and walks away with that quiet sense of satisfaction you see in people who do exactly what they wanted to do, and who couldn't be stopped. When he's asked why he did it, he answers, "It was just for fun." It's brief, but it's hard to see what else he could have said. That day, he didn't win a race. He did better. He bypassed the rules, expectations, logic, and the most iconic metal structure in France. It wasn't a necessity, it wasn't even reasonable. And it's not useful. That's why we're still discussing it. Robert Moriarty never asked for permission. Not out of a taste for provocation, but simply because he had no reason to do so. At that time, asking for permission to do something that didn't harm anyone was still considered a waste of time. Moriarty didn't try to change the world. He just made sure not to be like it. So in 1984, he flew under the Eiffel Tower with a small plane, no flight plan, and the irresistible conviction that it's better to do something beautiful, without permission, than to do nothing at all with all the proper approvals. Robert Moriarty is not necessarily an example to follow. He's just an example of what happens when someone decides to do things their own way and ignores what society expects of them. The airplane is a form of transportation, but more importantly, a tool of freedom. It's the closest thing to Icarus's dream, and it's the best you'll get if your wish is to become a bird. Robert Moriarty was neither ill-intentioned nor seeking recognition. He flew under the Eiffel Tower for a surprisingly practical reason. Because he could. The sky also has its borders, its controlled airspaces, its CTRs, its TMAs, and areas that are completely off limits. I wouldn't try that feat again today if you ask me. But still, in spite of Gontran's complaints, it's probably one of the places where you feel the freest. So don't forget to look up at the sky. And to be Astrono Geek. See you next time.